Welcome to RS-503, Research Methods. For many of you, this is probably your first seminary course. This course is a prerequisite for all other courses. And in this course, we're going to teach you how to do research and write papers. I tell everyone that seminary is all about reading and writing. So you will be doing a good bit of writing here. And so we want you to get off to a good start and learn how to do research, how to write, how to format your papers correctly. So that is our goal for really this first course, how to do library research and things like that. Our main textbook for this course is Turabian, the 8th edition. So this first video will cover the first two chapters of Turabian. The first chapter, what research is and how researchers think about it, is just a general chapter regarding how to do research, what it's all about. So every time you ask yourself a question or look into seeking an answer for something, you are doing research. But whatever research you do is really unimportant or doesn't amount to anything if you do not report the results of your research in writing, because only in that way can others evaluate your claims and accept those claims. So you have to be able to express your research on paper. And so that is what we're going to try to do in this course. As you learn to do research, you will also learn to use other people's research, learn to evaluate also other people's research. Now, Turabian points out that there are ways to arrive at conclusions other than research. You can depend on tradition. You can depend on authority, intuition, spiritual insight. You can depend on emotion. But the problem is when you try to explain those results to others and try to convince them that they should believe what your conclusions are, then you have to do more than just state an opinion or describe your feelings. So this is how a research report differs from other kinds of persuasive writing. It rests on shared facts that the readers either accept as truths or they reject. So as you gather data, as you analyze data, as you study biblical text, as you interact with theologians, you must learn to clearly report your conclusions so that others can evaluate them and accept or reject them. I'm going to skip ahead to section 1.2. And by the way, I might add at this point, Turabian is a book that you will refer to time and time again. And so I'm presenting the material in Turabian in this way. I'm highlighting really what I think is important in Turabian. And so as you kind of go through Turabian with me, you can also highlight these various sections, because Turabian is a reference book, and you will be referring to it time and again as you write papers. So that's kind of the approach here. As I highlight things, you can highlight the same things as we go along. So researchers ask three kinds of questions. The first kind of question is what we call a conceptual question. That answers the question, what should we think? That is a so what question. This so what question doesn't tell readers what to do, but it helps them understand some issue. And conceptual questions are the main questions that are researched in the academic field. So as you do research here in seminary, the main questions you will be asking and answering are in this conceptual category. A second kind of question that is asked and answered by researchers are practical questions. What should we do? And so the answer to "so what" does not necessarily give understanding, but it tells the reader to do something, or to change something, or to maybe improve a certain situation. Many practical questions might be answered in your ministry skills courses, so you may have those types of questions to answer in those kind of courses. The final question is applied questions. What must we understand before we know what to do? So we often know we must do something to solve a practical problem, but before we can know what it is, we must do research to understand the problem better. And so this is called applied research. This is the third type of question that researchers answer. Let's skip now to section 2, or rather chapter 2, moving from a topic to a question to a working hypothesis. A research paper is more than just collecting data. You start doing research well before you log onto the internet to do research. You start on it well before you head to the library, and you continue with it after you think you have all the data that you need. There are 5 general goals in research. And according to Turabian, the researcher must do these 5 things. The first one, ask a question worth answering. So you may come up with a conceptual question, and the answer is so obvious that it's really not worth the research time and effort. The second question, find an answer that you can support with good reasons. Third, find reliable evidence to support your reasons. Fourth, draft a report that makes a good case for your answer. And finally, revise that draft until readers will think you met your first 4 goals. So the first 3 here have to do with the research process itself, and then the last 2 have to do with writing the results of the research. So you could do all the good research in the world, but if you don't do these last 2 well, then it's really all for nothing. Because if you cannot express your results in a way that will, in a persuasive way, then it's really, you've done all that work for nothing. And notice this last step, revise, revise, revise. Write and rewrite. And so in seminary, you're going to be very busy, and that's going to be a hard thing to do, is to do this revision. But to write a good paper, you need to revise, revise, and then revise again. 2.1, find a question in your topic. Let's skip down, and in that section we go down to 2.1.3, question your topic. So you don't do this just once. Turabian says do this throughout your project. Ask questions as you read, especially how questions and why questions. Ask how the topic fits into a larger context. Is your topic part of a bigger picture? If you are in, say, a bibliology class, and you're writing a paper that has something to do maybe with the inerrancy of Scripture, say, how does the question that you're asking regarding inerrancy, how does it fit into a larger context? Is there some current discussion about inerrancy going on? Is there a bigger picture controversy that inerrancy impacts? So you need to kind of ask yourselves these sorts of questions as you do your research and move through your project. Number 2, ask questions about the nature of the thing itself as an independent entity. Ask about how your topic has been approached before. On the subject of inerrancy, has there been controversy or discussion about inerrancy in previous generations? How has the topic fit in those kind of discussions? Third, turn positive questions into negative ones. So why, you might ask the question regarding inerrancy, why haven't more people accepted the fact that Scripture is without error? You might could approach it that sort of way. And finally, ask speculative questions. Number 5, ask what-if questions. How would things be different if your topic never existed, or if it disappeared or were put into a new context? Ask questions that reflect disagreements with a source. If a source makes a claim you think is weakly supported or even wrong, make that disagreement into a question. I think number 6 especially is a good source for papers. For as you read theological works, as you read commentaries on biblical books, you can come across things that commentators and theologians will state that you could see disagreements with. You could see that this might be a good research topic for you to investigate. And so maybe your paper could be just an interactive one where you're interacting with a certain author on a certain issue. Ask questions that build on agreement. If a source offers a claim you think is persuasive, ask questions that extend its reach. So this is kind of similar to what we were just talking about. A commentator or a theologian may stake out a position, and you think it's a good position, but then maybe you can think of a way that this might impact even another area. So instead of disagreeing with a source, you can agree with him but extend his work into another area. And then ask questions analogous to those that others have asked about similar topics. So if there's been other theological questions asked for other theological disciplines, maybe you could ask analogous questions for your particular topic. Look for questions that other researchers pose but don't answer. This is another great source for a research paper. If you are reading a journal article or something and the author may leave open-ended some issues that he's been wrestling with and has not come to a conclusion on. Those might prompt your thinking in certain areas and provide a fruitful research topic. Number 10, find an internet discussion list and then lurk reading the exchanges between people. That would also be a good a way to maybe find a topic, maybe a good way to ask questions on the topic you have decided on. Well, you need, as you come up with questions, as you ask questions throughout the research process, you need to at the same time evaluate your questions. As we see here, Turabian says, not all answers are equally useful, so evaluate your questions and scrap those that are unlikely to yield interesting answers. Reconsider your questions when the following is true. you can answer the question too easily. It's probably not worth going down that road. You can't find good evidence to support the answer, so that there's relevant facts are hard to come by. So you may not want to go down that road. Number 3, you can't plausibly disprove the answer. The answer seems self-evident because the evidence overwhelmingly favors one answer. So it's hard to imagine disproving it. So interacting with this sort of question in the long run is really pointless. The point is to find a question you want to answer. That's kind of the bottom line. So 2.2 propose some working answers. So before you get too deep into the research project, there's another step you could take. And Turabian says beginners want to resist this step, but experienced researchers usually attempt it. Once you have a question, imagine some plausible answers, no matter how sketchy or speculative. At this stage, don't worry whether they're right. That comes later. So try to ask good questions and come up with some good working answers before you really get going in a big way. And finally, 2.2.1, decide on a working hypothesis. So you've asked all the questions, you've come up with what you think is a really good question, and then you've come up with what you think is a good answer, an answer that you can research, an answer that has data out there that you can interact with. You're all ready to go, and so then you can call that, at this point, your working hypothesis. And so this can guide your further research. And so a good working hypothesis is really what you need to come up with early on in your thinking about your research proposal. This will get you thinking about the evidence you're going to need, the kind of evidence that you'll need to support this working hypothesis. And conversely, if you can't imagine a working hypothesis, then you need to kind of step back, go back, reconsider your question before you move ahead. So these are the more salient points from the first couple of chapters of Turabian. In the next video, we will move to chapter 3. Thank you.